The Buckeye State Sheriff's Association is providing this podcast as a public service for informational purposes only. The views and opinions expressed by the host or guest of this podcast are their own and may not reflect those of the BSSA, employees of the BSSA, or any of its officials. Any reference to a specific product, entity, opinion, issue, or other such item does not constitute an endorsement or recommendation thereof by the BSSA. If you have any questions about this disclaimer, please contact the Buckeye State Sheriff's Association.
Just seeing things that fall apart across the country, figuring out how that could fall apart here or what could fall apart here. If X, Y, and Z is happening one county over or a state over, we're living on borrowed time. It's going to happen here. So how quickly we can prepare our people for it, not only for their safety, but to benefit the community. The community needs well-trained officers. We need our officers to be well-trained so they can do the best for them and the best for themselves.
Welcome to the Buckeye State Sheriff's Association podcast, where we'll introduce sheriffs and deputies across Ohio. During this conversation, you'll get to know the men and women serving you and hear all about the good work being done in the Buckeye State every day. Now let's join your host, Paulding County Sheriff Jason Landers, and today's special guest.
Welcome to the Buckeye State Sheriff's Association podcast. We're here today with Sheriff Marc Ruskey from Henry County, Ohio. I'm Jason Landers, a sheriff in Paulding County, and I'm the host of today's podcast. We're going to welcome in Sheriff Marc Ruskey. He's in the studio right here, Paulding County, Ohio, in the Flatlands. You know, you talked about, Sheriff, when I said, where are we going to meet? I said, we are in this really old World War II brick structure. Was I wrong?
No, you were right. You had me nervous pulling in back here.
Yeah, man. Well, welcome over to Paulding. We're glad to have you over here. You're able to stop at the office for a little bit before we came this way. I'm excited personally to get to know a little bit more about you, and I'm sure the listeners from Henry County across Ohio and the United States of America and beyond will be able to learn a little bit more about the sheriff that's serving Henry County. Starting this year, Sheriff, you're in your first term, right?
Yes, first term started January 6th.
Good. Well, let's start off a little bit. Tell us a little bit about Marc Ruskey. Who are you? Where are you from? Where are you born and raised?
So I was born and raised in Henry County. I grew up in the village of Florida and attended DePoint schools. Probably what got me into this career field is too many games of cops and robbers as a kid. I think I chose the right side.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, definitely. I mean, as far as your parents are probably a little more proud of that decision as well, I'd say. So you talk about Florida, and if you're not from this area, you might not be familiar. So that's situated, if I remember correctly, along the Maumee River, right? The highway goes right along the river through the little, is it a village? Or
it's
is
a village,
it a little village of Florida? Talk about growing up there in rural northwest Ohio a little bit in Florida.
Yeah, it's a nice town. It's kind of that the town everybody appreciates around. Not a lot of activity. Nice neighborhood. People enjoy the community for the most part. There's little to no crime there. Fun growing up.
Yeah, nice place there. So we talked a little bit off air before we started recording. You graduated Napoleon High School, is that right?
Yes.
So talk a little bit about that time period. I mean, any involvements in high school? Is there anything? What were you interested in, or was it simply just getting ready for your career, playing cops and robbers?
I tried out a few different things. The thing that I jumped into that has helped me probably the most in my career is martial arts. I jumped into martial arts at 14 or 15 years old, and I've stuck with it since. I've done it, I think, 23, 24 years now. I train regularly, and it's been pretty impactful for both me and people that I train with.
Well, you're a pretty thick guy, man. Let's make a deal. Don't practice on me while we're here during this recording. That's for sure. The people listening to the podcast don't need to listen to me struggling, trying to get out of a chokehold or something like that. Talk a little bit, if you would, about where you went from high school and then how you got into law enforcement. Did you go straight from high school into a career center? Did you go to college? What got you to when you then went to the police academy?
So Fort County offered law and rescue at the time. You could take some law enforcement-related courses and fire and EMS, and I had zero interest in fire and EMS. However, I took it, and it was also probably one of the best things I ever did. So graduating high school, I was immediately able to join a fire and EMS agency. And at 18 years old, at that time, they would allow you to go through the police academy. So I jumped into the police academy and was running fire and EMS at the same time. So this is actually my 20th year in fire and EMS. I stopped running fire just to kind of trim down the number of certifications you have to maintain. But so this is my 20th year in public safety total. And again, in 2005, I jumped into the police academy, graduated from there in 2006, and started with the Henry County Sheriff's Office in 2007.
All right, good. So we'll talk about your law enforcement, your career a little bit. So, man, you got right into it. And you go into Henry County, and is that the only law enforcement job that you've had, Mark, or did you leave, come back? How did that look?
So
for you?
I kept my certification right out of the academy. I jumped on with a village to get my certification going, and as soon as I got on with that village, the sheriff in Henry County at the time was Sheriff Nye. He offered me a position at the sheriff's office, so I jumped on there and started full time in 2007 and worked through 2020. The last 7 years there was as a sergeant with the sheriff's office. After 2020, I kind of dove into the training community. I was fortunate enough to travel quite a few states, and I've taught at different tactical officers associations throughout the country, including Texas, Georgia, Indiana, Michigan, Ohio, and the National Tactical Officers Association. So I've been fortunate enough to experience that realm. And since 2020, prior to me taking over as sheriff, I jumped on with the village of Deschler. And in 2022 into 2023, I did an interim chief position for them to kind of rebuild and revamp their police department. Okay. Leading up to now.
Well, that's cool. Talk about the training aspect of that. I think that's interesting. So when you left the sheriff's office there, and what got you towards that vision of training, and then what kind of training did you provide? I mean, did you start a business? Did you jump onto a national organization or a local training facility, or what got you into that? What kind of training did you do?
So this could get pretty lengthy here. So
sure.
My interest with training started early on, just really seeing incidents from law enforcement to EMS, seeing incidents that you could sit back and be like, man, this went really well because that person is, choose appropriate language here. That person is just awesome. They are crap hot at what they're doing. And then you'd see other incidents and you'd be like, man, the outcome could have been so much different had this person been on their game. They've been trained better, just been more efficient at what they're doing. And so you see those highs and lows, and you start to wonder, like, how can we impact that? How can we change outcomes for people on the front end of training? So I would say probably 2008 or 9, I just started simple stuff, first aid and CPR, and I was doing that for fire and EMS and law enforcement. And as time progressed, like I said, I started in martial arts at a young age. So I started dabbling with that, training other people. And then I attended a few conferences, and I left like extremely disappointed. A couple of them, I was shaking my head like, how did you even become a conference instructor with the quality of training that you're not providing? Mm-hmm. So it got me really spinning on what can I teach, how can I implement it, where can I reach out? So I sent my curriculum in, I developed a course, and I sent it into Ohio's tactical conference, and they accepted me. So I got to teach, and the first year was phenomenal. The reviews were pretty great. Lots of cops, some of the quotes are vague descriptions of the course, follow-ups where every cop needs his class, or I've never experienced this type of training in law enforcement. So it provided some strong motivation. And it's hard to describe. It's a question I get a lot. What's your class? Well, it's encounters, and it's law enforcement encounters. So it's geared towards edge weapons and violent encounters, but it's embedded with human factors, how we see, how we perceive, just a broad spectrum of again, it's hard to put into words. So it can be you go into a scenario, you're interacting with somebody, and out of nowhere they pull a weapon and attack you, or it can be a physical, just hands-only altercation. But it goes back and forth from physical time on the mats to pausing and explaining like how our vision works, how we actually see versus what most people just expect we see, our reaction time and how long it actually takes our brain to see something that enters our eyeballs. Sounds boring and it sounds lame, but when you pair that with the physical hands-on, people are starting to experience and understand, like, man, we are the saying of, we're behind the reactionary curve is it doesn't do the service until you experience hands-on how quickly things can go south for us when we're distracted. Yeah,
absolutely. And Mark, is that something you continue to teach today, or when you got where you're currently at today, did you put that to the side?
No, I'm actually still doing it. So this year I taught down in Georgia. I'm geared to teach at Michigan and Ohio still. Okay,
excellent. Let's talk about you a little bit more in your upbringing or currently hobbies and interests. What you talked about martial arts. That's one of the things you talked about. Talked about cops and robbers a little bit. Chose the right side of that. Any other interests or things that you're involved in your personal life?
Yeah, largely family time, and occasionally, and I still like to, but I don't make time for it, is hunting. But most of the time now is spent with family and just training and working out.
Sure. Sheriff, one of the things that I talked a lot about, and I tend to mention this in every podcast, is connecting sheriffs and deputies with the communities that they serve. Now, I'm from Northwest Ohio, so I'm familiar with Henry County and the lay of the land. Talk about Napoleon's a county seat right there. Talk about your community. What kind of things are in there? And just gauging some feedback from the podcast. What kind of communities are there? What kind of school districts do you have in your community right there? If there's anything notable to talk about, Campbell Soup's a big one that I think of when I think of Henry County. Just talk a little bit about the community that you serve.
Yeah, it's very much like most of Northwest Ohio, pretty rural, pretty limited resources, lots of small villages and communities. We have a lot of great school systems, and within those school systems, everybody's very prideful about their schools and what each school offers. Very, very strong athletics throughout the county. A lot of people recognize different schools in our county for some of their athletic talents and abilities. We have the Maumee River running through, cutting the county in half. We have, like you said, Campbell Soup's is pretty notable for our county. We're a great county, but again, we're pretty rural, so it's kind of a pride point for me of trying to provide the most quality and capable resources possible for Henry County. We don't have, much like you, we don't have the resources of a large city or a large county. When stuff falls apart, we have to problem solve it from the sheriff's office standpoint. We can't call the SWAT team from some big city to come in and handle a call, so we have to work hard to really provide the best quality personnel, the best training for them, to support our community. It's a challenge. I enjoy the challenge. It's fun, but it's time consuming and pretty effortful.
I just had this conversation this morning and made this statement with one of my employees. It's one of the most humbling parts of my job, I think, and yours as well, I'm sure, is that people call us as the sheriff to solve their problems. If there's extra work that needs to be done some way in the governmental process, people's solution to try to get a solution is let's call the sheriff and see what they can do. And so I might have some staff that might say, why are we always the ones that have to do the extra work? And I said, well, you know what? I could ask that question as well, but I say, let's do it. And then when we walk away at night, we go, that's right, we got it done. When someone else didn't want to do it, didn't know how to do it, they call the sheriff. And when I use the term sheriff, it's our entire operation. We are all part of the same operation. Yeah. And sometimes in the community, they don't differentiate what we know would be a deputy sheriff, regardless if you've been there a year, 6 months, or 30 years, from the sheriff. You're all the sheriff. And when they need help, they talk to the sheriff. They want to talk to the sheriff, and that's all of our staff's how we get things done, man. And so it's just a humbling position that we're in, I believe. And you talk about that, just being at rural and their lack of resources and such. So you're situated similar to me. US 24 is a 4-lane highway, runs through our communities. You're probably closer to Toledo, Ohio, than Fort Wayne, Indiana, but on that same stretch of road right there. So when we do need those bigger city things, they're there. They're just they're going to be 45 minutes or an hour away when we need those specialized resources. So you become skilled. I think that's your point of your training and different things of how we have to make sure our staff are capable of handling nearly every situation you could imagine out there, because we have to handle it. We're the first responders. We can't just say, no, I don't want to go because we're not prepared yet, right? So it's just it's unique. And I found that I think the statistics, and this is probably an average, that 80% of sheriff's offices across this nation are rural county sheriffs. And so most people are like you and I. I mean, they just have to be skilled to do from the first call that comes in, the investigation. A lot of times we don't have detectives and specialized units and things, so we just have to be skilled to do all those things, don't we?
Yeah, it's one of probably the most challenging jobs in the country, or perhaps in the world, is law enforcement, especially with how we are in the U.S. You can go from taking a civil complaint in one moment to going to arrest somebody in the next moment for a domestic, to doing CPR or some form of resuscitative effort on a child or somebody in need. You can't. It's hard to encapsulate the ups and downs of the job and how many different things we have to be skilled in, or at least have a baseline knowledge in. I'm not sure of many careers where we expect people to be able to problem solve everything without specializing it down to different departments inside of an agency or a workforce. Here, we don't have that luxury. Yeah, you have to know CPR. You have to know how to shoot. You have to know how to fight. Or if you don't, it's literally life and death for you.
Yeah, it's absolutely correct. And we also, as sheriffs in Ohio and probably sheriffs across the country, where we have to be accessible to our people 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I mean, I use the term a lot of times, the buck stops here. If you don't have a solution, you can't get the answer you need, you have to call me and I have to make a decision. And so, that's why it kind of laid the foundation to your education experience leading up to my next question is going to be, Mark, let's talk a little bit about when you had the opportunity to run for county sheriff and get elected. So you're one of Ohio's newest elected sheriffs, and I think we talked earlier, probably maybe the youngest sheriff in the state of Ohio, which is pretty cool because 13 years ago that was me. That was I believe I was when I was elected at the age of 36, 37 when I took office. I think that put me as the youngest sheriff in Ohio at that time, and it's pretty cool, man. Congratulations to you that you achieved that goal, and you've worked to get there. Talk a little bit about the experience running for sheriff, and then how's things going since you took office. We're 4.5 months into your first year.
Yeah, it's been an eye opener. I mean, again, you running for any office, you have to learn to do a lot of things. You have to become a master at marketing. You have to be very skilled at communication and portraying your vision. It's tasking in many more ways than I would have ever guessed to just run for the office alone. But it's going exceptionally well. The balance point I'm finding right now is not drowning my staff in change. I'm trying to just do the change that needs to be done quickly, without too much at once. And they've had a lot of things thrown at them. They've adapted to it. They've modified the things they need to just to catch us up, bring us up to speed. I've committed pretty heavy during the campaign to training. I'm very passionate about it for a lot of reasons that I've already described. So they've been thrown into a lot of training. I mean, I would have to guess without looking. I bet as an office we're probably over 500 hours of training just up to this point in this year alone, just for anything and everything from online learning to hands-on training, physical skills, shipping off to different training locations, SWAT schools or active shooter trainings. We've taken a pretty deep dive into training, and I think the staff recognizes this is the new norm, and they're going to have to become learners, which is good.
That is good. Sheriff, we talk, about your upbringing. You talked about playing cops and robbers, and it tells me that at a young age you had a vision to be in public safety and to get in this career field. Tell the listeners a little bit about your passion to do this job. I mean, to have the level of commitment that you have to stick with this career, run for the elected office of sheriff and obtain that. What is the passion that gets you to wake up every morning and go back to Napoleon and serve your citizens in Henry County?
Yeah, I've chewed on this for a long time, and it's hard to really lock in the answer. I love public safety. I love problem solving. I probably like many cops, you love the emergency settings. You love having to solve things under pressure. Just seeing things that fall apart across the country, I feel like it's a responsibility of figuring out how that could fall apart here or what could fall apart here, and how we can get ahead of it, how we can plan accordingly, how we can train people accordingly. If X, Y, and Z is happening, one county over or a state over, we're living on borrowed time. It's going to happen here. So how quickly we can prepare our people for it, not only for their safety, but to benefit the community. The community needs well-trained officers. We need our officers to be well-trained so they can do the best for them and the best for themselves.
That's a good answer, man. I tell you, this podcast is sponsored by the Buckeye State Sheriff's Association. So if you would, Mark, just take a moment. I know early in your tenure as the elected sheriff, you might not have as much involvement as I do or some others with that association. But, you're down there for a minimum of 3 weeks, which is mandatory law in Ohio once you're elected sheriff, that you got to have 2 weeks. The way we structure it, you have 2 weeks of training before you assume the office, and then you work about 6 or 7 weeks or so, and then you get your third and final week of your sheriff's training, at which you have an opportunity to meet with almost every other sheriff in the state and bounce questions on them. Do you have any comments about BSSA and your experiences with that? Have you joined any committees? Have you had any involvement otherwise with the association?
It's a great organization. It goes back to, we don't have to have all the answers, but we just have to be connected with people who do, and the BSSA provides that network of people. You can call any number of people, the director of the BSSA. I mean, just phenomenal resources that can help make our lives a lot easier individually as sheriffs. I am not on any committees. I do plan on getting involved in that, but I had a lot of goals and different tasks that I wanted to complete in a short time just to get us up and going. So my goal is next year, likely, or in the next couple of years, to start taking a deeper dive with the organization learn more about it, see about the committees, and perhaps bring some staff members down to committees with me.
Yeah, absolutely, and I encourage you to do that. I mean, obviously, I've been involved and engaged in that association for most of my tenure as a sheriff, and you get into some of those committees, and it's a commitment, specifically if you want to drive and be in person and partake in those in-person conversations. And today we have the ability of virtual opportunities where you can log in from your smartphone if you want and be a part of it. But there's so much to learn about. One of the most important committees we have is a legislative committee that Sheriff Mike Simpson chairs, and just learning about the things that are going on in both chambers of the legislature and things that affect law enforcement directly. And then it gives us an opportunity to voice our opinion, if we support it, if we don't, and if we question it, why, and help mold those things that ultimately affect the citizens of Ohio and what we do as law enforcement officers. So, I think you're taking the right track, and if I go back to my guidance from my predecessor, it was kind of, slow track that a little bit, get your office under control in the way you want things to run, and then when you see that opportunity, dive in and get involved with those kind of things. But you said something earlier that's absolutely right. At any point in time, can you call another sheriff and bounce a question off, or I have this scenario, how do I handle it? Have you handled it before? And man, you can always call Bob Cornwell, as you talked about. His name's about on every one of these podcasts of someone who's been around 40-plus years. And if he doesn't know the answer to your question, I promise you he will know someone who's experienced it and lead you in the right way to get there. Before we take our ad break, I like to ask this question. Now, I've had some people on the podcast that have been in law enforcement and policing 40-plus years, and so their answers to this question have been, at times kind of interesting. But Mark, in your time in law enforcement, are there any changes that just sticks out to you of something that, in your fresh memory, you're like, here's something that I've seen changed or come into our profession in my period of time that stands out to you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not that old. However, we didn't have laptops when we started in the patrol cars. I went most of my career without a body camera on, and now we don't have that. Now we have the camera watching us or watching our interactions or portions of our interactions. We have access to technology that makes our job just a lot more efficient. Even smartphones. You can about run your office, even being outside of the office from your smartphone. It's impressive what technology is able to do. It's scary, but it's also impressive. Things like that. The other changes in the job is just case law. It's just every time you think you get a good grasp on something, there's new case law, and it's a challenge. If you're going to be in this profession, you better accept and/or enjoy learning, because you can't stop learning or you're going to fall behind. I
tell you, so I now chair our training and education committee for Ohio Sheriffs, and annually we'll have legal updates. We have attorneys come in and they talk to us about case law, like you just talked about, what to do and what not to do in these different types of scenario. And if I hear any grumbling from people, tenured sheriffs, longer than me or otherwise, deputies, what's this training about? It's legal updates, and they grumble. And to your point, that's at times the most important part of what we as administrators at the top have to do. So, I neglected myself in high school. I didn't pay a whole lot of attention, and today what I do more reading and writing. I was a kid in high school that said, I don't need to learn that. I'll never do that, right? Now that's all that I do. And if we don't read that case law and opinions and different things that happen, how do we guide our folks right? So when they ask us a question that's a procedural question or something, we have to be schooled in our policy. We have to be schooled in that case law so we can guide them to do the right things, right?
Yeah, I was the same kid in school. I wanted to graduate as quick as I could. I didn't want to have to read anything, learn anything. And now I feel like the opposite extreme, where I can't read enough. My wife, it's funny. She sees Amazon pull up and she goes, "What book did you order now?" It's not anything else. I don't have any other. I got to have this sweatshirt. No. When Amazon pulls up, oh, you found another book you needed to order. It's difficult, but it's a task I feel like every leader needs to do is constantly be evolving and reading and keeping up with the times.
Absolutely. Well, we're going to take our break. Our podcast is sponsored by the Buckeye State Sheriff's Association. We're going to take that break right now. We're going to come back and continue on with Sheriff Marc Ruskey from Henry County, Ohio, right after this break.
This podcast is sponsored by the Buckeye State Sheriff's Association. The BSSA is in Columbus, Ohio, and was established in 1931. The Buckeye State Sheriff's Association was formed to perpetuate an efficient organization of Ohio sheriffs and their deputies. BSSA provides an exchange of information pertaining to the duties, methods, and official practice of its members. The association also exerts such influence as may be necessary to bring about and preserve legislation in harmony with the needs of enforcement officials and the safety of the public. The BSSA supports the efforts of this podcast to promote Ohio sheriffs and deputies and their mission to serve and protect the citizens of Ohio.
Welcome back to the Buckeye State Sheriff's Association podcast. I'm Jason Landers. We're continuing on today in this interview with Marc Ruskey. He's the sheriff in Henry County, Ohio. The office is located in Napoleon. We talked about that a little earlier in the podcast when we were breaking down the community that Marc serves over there. So, Sheriff, let's talk a little bit more specifically about your office there in Henry County. Tell the listeners, kind of the size of the agency that you have, things going on within your operation.
Yeah, across the board, across the country, we always have the vision that all these agencies are huge, and actually the truth is that most law enforcement agencies across the country fall into the same as what Henry County is. It's about 25 or less. It's not a large agency. I believe we have right around 18 sworn officers. We have 3 different school resource deputies that are full-time in the schools. We have a drug investigator, a plainclothes detective, and then a uniformed investigator to just try to expedite how quickly we can close out cases and wrap up investigations and push them over to the prosecution side. We have a canine handler. Probably we'll be seeking another one shortly. We run a dispatch center. Fortunately for me, unlike yourself, I say fortunately, some sheriffs say no, it's unfortunate, but I'm a member of a regional jail versus having to supervise the jail on my own. Again, I think it's fortunate because that's a lot of time and energy. I applaud you guys who have to run your own jails. It's splitting your attention for sure, and it's a lot of commitment and work in different avenues that I can look to a board of directors for, and it makes it pretty smooth for me.
Well, you're right, so I'm unique. I come in as the sheriff to an operation where is a closed jail facility. Now, I worked within the organization, so I started in the jail. I was there when our jail was built here in Paulding, and then I was there when the jail had to close due to a funding situation. So after I was sheriff, probably 3, almost 4 years, and got educated in the community as far as what I felt the community wanted to see happen with that building. We put an operating levy on the budget, and it passed. So friends of mine who are part of regional jails would say, man, you're crazy, Landers. What are you doing reopening this jail? And I just thought it was the right thing to do for our community, the building that we had, and so today we run our own jail operation here, and so there is a lot that goes with it. There's a lot of we had a situation today that draws a lot of attention, that will draw a lot of time and money to the situation that's involved in corrections. So there's a lot of liability that we have to deal with as sheriffs that run their jails. But I want to spend a minute, if you would, just talk a little bit about the situation with the Correction Center in Northwest Ohio, of which you're a member. So if I remember, I think there's 5 counties that's part of that jail, and it's really like a small prison situation. If you would, just talk a minute about CC&O.
Yeah, so we have Williams, Defiance, Fulton, Henry, and Lucas that are all a member of CC&O. Like you just said, there's a lot of liability. There's a lot of responsibility with running a jail, and having the 5 together divides up the responsibilities. It's helps to make the business more efficient, and it takes a lot of obligation off my hands to directly be involved with that. We all are involved with it, but we can meet as a group, make decisions. We have a director for the jail. It just streamline a lot of things, and I can pay more attention in different areas that I have more knowledge on. Contrary to you, I did not start in the jail, so it would be a big challenge to learn the operations of a jail as the sheriff to take that on.
Yeah, and you and I were talking earlier when we were at my office about how we both seen different ways with when we talk about patrol deputies. And a lot of times when you talk about sheriffs and deputies, people only picture the folks driving the cruisers that say the word sheriff down the side. Here in Ohio, all cruisers are marked the same, and that's what they think it is. But there's so much more to it, and one of the most difficult jobs for me, I think, is communications. Those dispatchers, man, when those calls come in and you don't know what they're going to be when they come in or how many's going to come in at a time, the multitasking that takes place and the professionalism that has to go with that job is pretty difficult. So you and I talked a little bit about how what I've been doing internally of training future deputies in that communications role before they get into the cruiser to start their FTO. We also talked a little bit about how we start in the jail and how much more polished a deputy could be when they start the patrol side and they understand the interior parts of the jail operation. So just all aspects of being a county sheriff. Now, we'll include you in this, even though you don't manage your own jail. You're still part of a jail. You still sit on that board. You still absorb some liability from that, but versus a police department or maybe a state trooper here in Ohio. Sheriffs just have that whole criminal justice process when we're involved in the courts, from communications to transporting prisoners all over and civil process and all those things. It's a pretty special job.
Yeah, it's a lot to take on. I mean, it's at the very minimum, you have to know a little about a lot, and you have to know where to find the answers for the stuff that you don't know. It's a lot of responsibility. The dispatch center alone, like you said, we do have our own 911 center. It's a lot. Keeping up with that technology, next gen 911, just keeping up with all the changes. It's constantly evolving. I go back to, I don't know of any other career that changes more rapidly and that you have to be able to adapt and have a broad spectrum of knowledge that you do in law enforcement.
But I think I agree with that, and I think when you find success in it, that you appreciate that. I've said this for a long time when folks, whether I'm talking to the high school government class or wherever it might be, and people say, "What do you like most about your job?" There's a variety of answers to that. We all come back to public safety and protecting people and their property and these different kind of things. But one of the things that I tend to say, and I've said it since I was young, is not knowing what's going to come next, right? Not knowing when that radio is going to call your number or there's going to be a message sent out over it that changes what you're doing at this moment. You and I, as we sit here and conduct this interview, everything about the next few days of our life could change right now, right, as we're sitting here. And so I've always thought that piece was interesting. And there's a certain amount of not being sure of what your day is going to have in store that I appreciate about waking up every day. I have a calendar. I live by the calendar. I set reminders and timers and all these things for my days, and my intention is to follow that schedule when I start my morning. But when you're driving to work and something comes across the radio and you have to divert from that and go adjust, when you start juggling what the priority is and what you got to do, that's fun stuff, man. That's pretty special, and not everybody gets to do it.
Yeah, it's hard to articulate. I don't even know how to describe it, because the average person, it would just ruin their day. But I'm like you. I enjoy it. It's almost like what could pop up that I'm going to have to problem solve. I enjoy going out on serious calls. I enjoy the management side of and the leadership side of being the sheriff. But equally, I love the good calls. If it's something exciting, a B&E in progress, or something where you might have a hands-on altercation, whatever be the case. 2 a.m., it's not an inconvenience for me to answer my phone. It's kind of like, all right, here we go. I get to go have some fun, perhaps. And then there's the other side of that where it's not fun. You get called out for things that are not fun, death notifications, or things that are going to wreck somebody's world. It's part of the job. You can dread it, or you can embrace it and try to make the most of what you can for that person in the moment. It's a challenge, and it's, like I said, the whole job is a challenge. I enjoy it. I embrace it. It's just a lot to keep up with.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk a little bit more about your office, Mark. We ask the question sometimes if there's anything unique going on with, we'll start this way, like with staffing or anything. And I've always I found an interest as of late in recruiting videos and things that would draw not always young, but I'll say young people into our profession. So we invested probably a couple years ago now in some recruiting videos to just kind of showcase a little bit about what we look like and what we do and what we're expecting in our field and put those things out there. Today we live in a social media world. Rather we do advertisement commercials or things to try to bring good people into our profession. Is there anything that you have going on within Henry County in that regard?
From the aspect of advertising, I'm not diving into it yet. What I am doing is a few different approaches that most of our area I don't believe are doing yet. So we've implemented a 12-hour shift rotation for deputies. Most of the office is on that. So if you're a deputy on the road, most of the deputies are working 12s, meaning they get every other Friday, Saturday, Sunday off. There's some controversy in that. Some agencies are absolutely against it. For me, I think it's a huge selling point. And you can start to watch across the country when you see the promotional videos or the advertisement. Agencies are starting to advertise 12-hour shifts. And there's a reason, because you can start at some agencies and be stuck on second shift or third shift for 10 to 20 years, depending on the size of the agency and how really the luck of the timing. And depending on when you start, you might start off with Tuesday, Wednesday off, and you might be stuck with that rotation for a couple of years. So when you see, hey, I can go work at this agency and pretty quickly end up on a 12-hour shift with every other Friday, Saturday, Sunday off, it's pretty motivating. That draws in a lot of attention. One of the other things I'm doing is a huge dive into training. It seems, especially the younger crowd, they seem to appreciate training. So by implementing that and just word of mouth, letting them know, hey, this county they are serious about this. We're doing open mats, aiming for anywhere from 2 to 4 hours a week, where I try to at least squeeze in most, if not all, the staff for a 2-hour block. if that works out, we'd be close to 100 hours a year on hands-on training, physical training, which, as you know, we don't even have a requirement for that in Ohio. A couple times we've had maybe a 4-hour minimum hands-on use of force training, but year to year, typically it's 24 hours of online learning and you're good to go. That doesn't prepare anybody for anything. It checks the box, and I might offend some people from the state here, but it doesn't prepare anybody for anything. It checks a box. It says, hey, we told them this, we taught them this, which goes back to my big passion for training and education. There's a few sayings that I'm pretty I'm sold on, and I like them. And one is telling is not teaching. You can't just tell somebody, hey, don't do this or don't do that, and say, well, now they know better. We can do this with some of the most skilled cops. I can say, look, under threat, if you go backwards, if you retreat backwards, you have a huge chance of falling. And if you fall and lose your mobility, you can become significantly or seriously injured or killed because you have limited options now. I can tell you that did not teach you anything because it's innate in all of us most of us under threat. We're going to retreat backwards. So telling is not teaching. You have to physically put people through scenario-based training, contextually rich training, and get them to understand through training that, hey, when I'm moving backwards, I'm falling on a smooth, simple surface under minimal stress because I know we're in a training environment and you're not going to actually kill me, but I'm still falling. So if I'm experiencing that on the mats, how much worse is it going to be in the streets? And the other piece is education is not training. We talk about, we have 24 hours of mandatory training in Ohio. No, we have 24 hours of mandatory education. Education is just hearing it. We have semantic and procedural memory. Semantic is information. So I can tell you, hey, if you're doing CPR, you need to do this. Some people will say, hey, now he's training CPR. No, he's been told what it is, so he maybe know what the numerics are or the ratios are for CPR, but he's not been taught the procedure or the skill, so he doesn't have that knowledge, the physical knowledge on how to produce that. So we confuse that all the time. We hear it all the time. We've received this training. No, you've received some education, but you were never taught that training. So we expect, this is all the way back to the academy. We'll teach people defensive tactics and firearms, and there's lots of information, lots of research on this at 6 weeks post-academy, and this is not just Ohio, it's across the nation. 6 weeks post-academy, if you pull a recruit in, they can hardly perform the shooting skills that they were taught, the physical hands-on defensive tactics skills they were taught, because we've never taught them the proficiency. We teach them, they check the box, they do a quick test right after they're taught, so we can say, hey, look, they performed it 2 seconds after we taught it. They should be good, and then the skills deteriorate.
That's interesting, man. I think your passion for training can be contagious to people, Mark, as you continue on in your role as the sheriff and hopefully influence you've got some police departments within your area. Here we're part of a multi-county task force team as well as when you talk about these types of things with training, because a lot of us do what the minimal requirement is, to your point. And myself, as I listen to you talk, you start to question decisions you've made and thinking, man, we should be doing some things different when you talk about training. So I appreciate you diving a little deeper and talking about those things.
Yeah, it's we don't know what we don't know. That's the bottom line. Your academy was probably not much different than mine. You left it, and your confidence was enormous. Hey, I've been taught how to put handcuffs on somebody. I've been taught how to fight with somebody. I've been taught how to shoot. And then you watch body cam and video surveillance and all these other things, and you're like, these environments do not match how we trained. We're not even close to matching the training environment to real life, but we expect that expert level performance out of cops when they are immersed into these environments. When somebody attacks them with a knife or a gun, we sit back, hey, why couldn't they do this? Well, because when they were standing still on the square range shooting at the paper target, there was no stimulation. We didn't have to perceive any threat. The instructor said on the whistle, draw and fire 2 shots. Well, there's nobody in real life saying, hey, it's time to draw and fire 2 shots. You've got to make the perception of, holy crap, they just pulled a knife. You got to clear that thought and get to work. And our training is, honestly, we're probably 20 to 30 years behind in the training environment on what we should be doing to make it as close to real life as possible.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Well, listen, one thing I want to encourage you to do, I'm going to say this off the air, and as we build our friendship moving forward, man, is getting yourself out there into that training environment. For us, for Ohio Sheriffs, but for law enforcement in general, you've been doing that for a while, but there's opportunities when in Ohio, we have the Ohio Peace Officer Training Commission that establishes our training and guidelines and things, and they're always looking for feedback. They have public meetings for that stuff, and I would encourage you to get in front of those people and express yourself and the professionalism that you have that you have doing that. Well, Mark, as we're going to wrap this thing up here a little bit, is there anything going on within your agency or otherwise that you would care to talk about? Anything that we left out today?
No, I think we covered most of it.
All right, man. Well, I appreciate it, Sheriff Ruskey. I would like to thank you for being a part of today's episode. We would like to thank the Buckeye State Sheriff's Association for their sponsorship. For Sheriff Marc Ruskey, I'm Jason Landers, and I'll be right back here next month featuring another Ohio Sheriff or Deputy on the Buckeye State Sheriff's Association podcast.
Hi, my name is Bob Cornwell, and I'm the Executive Director of the Buckeye State Sheriff's Association, located in Columbus, Ohio. Thank you for listening to this podcast today. It was brought to you by the Buckeye State Sheriff's Association. With this podcast, we are striving to introduce you to sheriffs and deputies from around the state of Ohio and recognize their great work they do every day for the citizens of Ohio. For more information about our organization, Google Buckeye State Sheriff. Thank you.